Good afternoon. I would like to welcome you to our U.S. National Science Foundation informational webinar for the NSF Tech Accelerators initiative and the requests for information. Next slide. Today's webinar will include a brief introduction about TIP and NSF and the Tech Accelerators. That'll be followed by a presentation on the program model, as well as the Tech Accelerator role and qualifications and expectations. This will be followed by an introduction to our first four accelerators. We'll then provide an overview of the requests for information, and at the end, we'll move into a question and answer session. Next slide. As you saw in the video, the webinar is being recorded. Your mic and camera have been disabled. We will make the webinar recording and the entire presentation deck available to you in a thank you email, and this will also be posted on sam.gov. If you do require live captioning, please click on the live transcription and also click on show subtitles or show full transcription. As you listen to the presentation and have questions, please submit them in the Q&A. The chat box is also disabled. And I encourage you to listen to the entirety of the presentation, as many of your questions will likely be answered along the way. It is my pleasure to introduce you to the Director for Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships at the National Science Foundation, Dr. Erwin Janchandani. Erwin?
Well, thanks very much, Doug, and good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you're located or when you might be listening to this webinar. As Doug said, my name is Erwin Ganchanani, and I have the pleasure and the honor of serving as the NSF Assistant Director for Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships, or TIP, as we call it. And so effectively, I help lead the TIP Directorate that we stood up here at NSF a few years back now. I'm really excited to see so many folks interested and engaged and attending today's webinar for this very important and what we hope timely initiative, the NSF Tech Accelerators. We're really looking forward to giving you some information about this initiative today over the course of the next little while here, and also looking forward to your engagement in this initiative as we drive forward with what we're trying to accomplish for the nation at the end of the day. Some of you on this webinar, I presume, have quite a bit of familiarity with the National Science Foundation and even the TIP Directorate, but perhaps some of you have a bit less familiarity. And so if you'll bear with me, I wanted to take just a couple of minutes to provide some contextual framing about NSF and the TIP Directorate and why we're talking about tech accelerators today, how this all sort of fits in and ties together. So as some of you know, the National Science Foundation has been around for almost 76 years, just over 76 years, in fact. And we are the agency within the federal government that supports advances across all fields of science and engineering, with a particular focus on fundamental research, but increasingly so also accelerating the translation of research results into practice as well. We're the agency that has brought you many of the components, the wireless connectivity, the touchscreen interface, for instance, that are on the smart devices that some of you may be tuning into this webinar on. We've brought you the search engines on the internet, MRI technologies, organ transplant network optimization. We're the agency that has supported discovery and innovation and the people who make that discovery and innovation possible for our country over the course of the last 8 decades or so. We've also adapted in terms of our focus areas and priorities over time as well. So for example, about 5 or 6 years ago, Congress started down a path to establish a new unit within NSF with the specific goal of responding to, perhaps even being out in front of, a set of new and unique challenges facing our science and technology ecosystem in this country. That new unit is the TIP Directorate in particular. Congress recognized 5 or 6 years ago that we were facing very fierce competition in science and technology from competitors all around the world. The fact that Our talent base here in the United States is increasingly distributed across sectors and regions of our country, not just in academic institutions, but in private industry and nonprofits and governments as well. And finally, that the pace of innovation was increasingly accelerating as a result of access to data and now artificial intelligence over the last few years as really the drivers, the new currency, if you will, in so many fields of science and engineering. And so that backdrop is what ultimately led to the establishment of the TIP Directorate, where we are focused on three primary goals. Number one, accelerating technology to the market as quickly as we can. Number two, growing a workforce at all levels and for all different types of jobs to be able to do that work and to become a part of the 21st century digital economy. And third, to attempt to do everything that I just described in every corner of the country as well. Now, one of TIP's goals from the very beginning has also been to be experimentalist in nature. We want to be at the forefront of science and technology, but we also want to be creating and piloting new models, new approaches, new mechanisms to tackle challenges and bottlenecks, to unlock new innovation and make possible new sectors that cannot otherwise easily be solved or addressed or given rise to through traditional methods and through our more historic approaches to innovation and discovery over the course of the last many decades. We recently launched an effort called NSF's X Labs, an initiative that's really focused on flexible, outcomes-driven work to try to build and accelerate novel platform technologies that are capable of creating new sectors and advancing use-inspired scientific breakthroughs. And that initiative invests specifically in independent teams that are working full-time to overcome persistent barriers to the translation of high-impact challenges. It's a new mechanism, a new approach for being able to drive progress in the science and technology ecosystem. The NSF Tech Accelerators initiative that we're talking about today, you're going to hear more about that from the team, is our newest innovation initiative and is similarly trying to be tied to this vision of new mechanisms, new tools in our toolbox, if you will, for overcoming barriers to technology development and advancement, and ultimately accelerating technology to the market. Our specific focus with the tech accelerators is on deep tech areas that are currently underinvested at the pre-seed, seed, and Series A stages, and that can demonstrate viability for these areas in part by crowding in investment from venture and other funders over time. And so you will hear, for instance, talk of raising significant cost share on the part of proposing teams, especially in the later stages of technology development and commercialization as they're pursuing the vision of the tech accelerators model. NSF Tech Accelerators may be new or existing organizations that comprise a range of stakeholders, researchers, innovators, founders, entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, and other investors, leading industry experts, government funders, and beyond. And we envision new partnerships that are necessary for each tech accelerator to be successful in addressing commercialization barriers that hinder technological advancement, understanding the existing investment landscape, or having the operational capabilities and agility to support research teams that they in turn fund, and NSF's investment ultimately in accelerating novel ideas from the lab to the market, including funding riskier technologies and approaches or de-risking technologies as they develop and mature. As part of the launch of this initiative last week, we called out 4 areas that we felt fit the mold of this program, the goals that we're trying to achieve, and you'll hear more about those areas along with the overall model from the team in just a little bit. We issued a request for information, or an RFI. And so in that RFI, we've outlined the rationale for why NSF TIP is establishing this initiative, some of what you've just heard me say, and some of what you'll hear from the team here in just a little bit. And it also lays out some specific areas where we'd like input from you all on this call and beyond. Specifically, through this RFI, we are seeking input from the community on the NSF Tech Accelerator framework, including the program model, the organizational structure, and these and other deep tech topics that we believe, or the community believes, could be ripe for this framework. And in addition to gathering that feedback, this RFI is also intended to identify prospective organizations that might be interested in leading and operating an NSF Tech Accelerator, including in the initial 4 areas that we've scoped out. Now, while the Tech Accelerator framework has been designed by a team of experts, and you're going to have the opportunity to hear from some of them this afternoon, experts who've managed other TIP programs, who've routinely engaged with the research, innovation, and venture capital community to understand pain points and areas of underinvestment that are necessary to drive further U.S. competitiveness forward if we can address that underinvestment. We also recognize that there may be some adjustments needed, and that's precisely why we are beginning with the RFI phase and looking to you for your inputs beginning today. So whether you're interested in providing feedback or in the NSF Tech Accelerator role, I really hope you will respond to this RFI to help us accelerate these accelerators forward and ultimately achieve the mission space that we're trying to deliver on, which is taking ideas from the lab into the market faster and for greater impact for this country as we go forward. Now, before I close, I just want to take one last second to acknowledge all of the NSF team. We have a tremendous team of folks in the Tech Accelerator section within the TIP Directorate. We also have colleagues across this agency, contract support, legal, etc., all of whom have come together to work on the development and launch preparation for the NSF Tech Accelerators initiative. And I want to thank them for their dedication to this effort. I want to thank them for their dedication to TIP and NSF, and I want to thank them for their dedication to this nation. And you see all of their names on this slide, as well as the contractor support that's made this possible. So my gratitude to them, and again, my thanks to all of you for your time today on this webinar, your interest in this effort, and we very much look forward to seeing your great ideas as part of the RFI responses going forward. Doug, with that, I'll kick it back over to you.
Thank you, Erwin, and thank you for the tremendous amount of support you've provided in getting this initiative off the ground, working not only within NSF, but the higher levels of government that want to support this activity. Next slide. So as Erwin mentioned, you know, the challenge that we are facing today is one of traditional research not making it to the market. We've all heard the phrase Valley of Death and possibly even lived through a few of those. The idea behind the Tech Accelerator is to take those promising ideas that might be too risky for other investment or not taken out of the university. But the goal is to strengthen the U.S. economy and national security. We intend to invest in promising technologies and teams as well. We are what we call taking multiple shots on goal by doing it with pre-seed, seed, and stage A-level funding activities, and bringing in other investment that so it's not just a government investment discussion, and really aiming at trying to remove the barriers that have been hindering so much and so many of the innovation solutions over the years. Next slide. Our mission, as we've stated already, is to transform the basic research that is coming out of not just the universities, but the companies, the nonprofits, and others, and make that technology scalable and market ready. We're doing this with a couple of goals in mind. The first goal is designing, building, and scaling for the market to catalyze partnerships, including investment partnerships to bring expertise and resources together. We want to increase industry pull. Too many times, investors see things that are being pushed to them. We want them to invest and pull the technology earlier in the life cycle. And we're really trying to determine what gaps and barriers really need to be solved in order to bring these technologies to market sooner. Next slide. There are really 6 pillars behind the initiative. The first is this acceleration model, taking technologies sooner to the market. We are, as Erwin mentioned, focusing on deep technologies in the accelerator. We are working with teams We're expecting those of you that want to do the research to bring teams to the table. We are providing entrepreneurial resources to all of the teams involved to help them accelerate their technologies to the market. We're focused on partnerships that may not be in existence today. How can we make those partnerships relevant and performing? And last is just the commercialization expertise. Many innovators and entrepreneurs might not have that experience. The goal is to bring people in as part of our team that will help in the commercialization. Next slide. So our job at NSF is to establish the program model, including the guidance and processes to the accelerators. We'll have oversight over the tech accelerators, and we'll also do evaluation. What we are doing is funding and working with a tech accelerator. They will be a central connector to the community at large. Their job will be to help identify research topics, to address the commercialization aspects. They will implement the model that we'll describe today, including research funding opportunities funded by NSF, but to the community of researchers. And last is their job is going to be to help the teams through the entire process. We want them all to be successful. Last is if you're a member of a research or innovation team, this will give you an opportunity to apply for funding opportunities from NSF through the Tech Accelerator. You'll, of course, develop milestones and deliverables and be expected to deliver on those, as well as take the guidance for entrepreneurial services, mentorships, coaches, intellectual property, etc. Next slide. This is a little bit of a simpler graphic than the text on the previous slide. We're the initiative at NSF. We're funding 4 accelerators to start with, and we fully expect to fund future accelerators. Each of those accelerators will be funded and paid for their operational costs, and we will also provide those accelerators with the funding to provide to innovation teams as part of the accelerator, all aimed at helping those teams deliver technology to the market. Next slide. Let me go ahead and talk about the program model, how it works. Next slide. Again, our job is to enable transformation into the market. It will be dictated by the maturity of the technology that you bring to the table in a given topic area. And that will be aligned to each of the project stages of the model. Stage 1 is what is equivalent to a pre-seed. It'll be up to 12 months and up to $500,000. We're expecting you to come with your team in a certain topic area with possible partners, but we expect you to do customer discovery and develop initial prototypes. Up to 10 teams per topic are expected to be awarded. Our second stage is the build stage, equivalent to a seed stage in the venture world. We will provide up to 24 months and up to $5 million to each team. Again, the goal is to take the results of their previous research and advance it through proof of concepts into minimal viable products and commercialization strategies. This includes validation for market opportunities and doing the necessary tech transition that you need. Up to 5 teams will be provided build stage awards. Last is a scale stage. This is the opportunity to take your technology from a seed stage into a Series A equivalent stage, up to 36 months, up to $10 million for each award. The goal here is really starting to get it towards the market, building those partnerships, building those opportunities for other investment, and up to 3 teams will be awarded a scale stage award in each stage. I do want to point out that each of these stages is independent for each topic. Just because you got a stage 1 award does not guarantee you a stage 2 or a stage 3 award in that same topic area. The independence will require you to be performing throughout the entire time, and again, no guarantees of a next step, next stage. Next slide. The outcomes we're expecting, of course, they'll be based on clear milestones, delivering outcomes and impact, things like patents and licenses, entity formation, companies, nonprofits, etc., partnering with industry and others, pilots, open source. All of these are deliverables we expect to happen during the time of the accelerator. We will work to strengthen the entire ecosystem within each topic area, and again, supporting the cost share opportunities. Next slide. I did mention gaps and barriers. Many people have different opinions about what is a gap or what is a barrier. And deep tech tend to have unique technical and commercialization gaps and barriers. The goal here, each tech accelerator will leverage not only their own deep tech experience, but others that they might bring onto their team in the accelerator in order to be successful in helping to knock down the barriers that people find. Obviously, there's barriers in the customer and unclear needs. There might be barriers of capacity or shortages of talent. There can be barriers of long cycles. Also depends on if you're doing software or hardware. Software seems to be able to do pretty quickly. Hardware can certainly take a longer time. Oftentimes, hardware is more capital intensive, which can be a barrier. Integrating new technologies into existing systems or into open source systems can sometimes slow adoption as well. Lastly is just the investment community might be risk averse depending upon the tech area, depending upon the solution that you might be bringing to the table. Next slide. Go ahead to the next slide. I'd like to just give you a quick introduction to the RFI. As Erwin mentioned, the #1 priority is to seek input from the community about the program model, about the deep tech areas, about the organizational structure we're proposing for the accelerators. You'll hear a lot more about the 4 technical areas later: ocean tech, ag tech, materials tech, and sci-tech. The second purpose for the RFI is to start to establish the accelerators using a competitive multi-step other transaction approach. We intend, based on responses to RFI, we intend to invite candidates to do a full proposal, and we will select 4 organizations to be our first 4 accelerators. We're going to talk about their role, their expected capabilities and expertise, and what we expect their performance deliverables and expectations might be. Lastly is the RFI response, how to go about it, the eligibility, and the response submission information. Next slide. I'd like to introduce Shelby Smith. Shelby is the RFI lead within the Tech Accelerator, and she's going to give us more information about the Tech Accelerator role, qualifications, and performance expectations. Shelby, over to you.
Thank you, Doug. Nice to meet everybody this afternoon or morning, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us. I'll make sure that my mic is off. So I'm here to talk about the NSF Tech Accelerator role. Very excited about this new opportunity to establish these organizations to be able to help advance research outputs toward scalable, market-ready technologies. Next slide, please. So Doug has mentioned and set up the queue around the Tech Accelerator model, where we are first establishing the Tech Accelerators, who will then invest in a series of research teams through research topics aligned to that deep tech area. Doug has already highlighted a lot of this, but again, I want to re-emphasize the importance around the role of how we see a strategic partner in our Tech Accelerator, working very closely with the NSF TIP program team to advance our overall programmatic goals of the initiative. So each Tech Accelerator will be a central role, a central connector of all the variety of stakeholders within that deep tech space. So it's not just going to be researchers and innovators, but you could also expand into the sectors, venture capital, and so many other communities that would be able to create the synergies and to be able to engage in the Tech Accelerator itself. Additionally, they're going to be responsible for those high impact topic areas. There's been already some questions that have come in to say, what are my topic areas that would be responsible within a Tech Accelerator? Well, just using an example of ocean tech, the Tech Accelerator will be responsible for assessing a landscape and helping to identify those research spaces that should either be invested in to be able to help advance that ecosystem, and also to address the gaps and barriers toward some of those commercialization challenges that hinder technology to the marketplace. And you're going to learn more about that from our technical experts leading our technical Tech Accelerator topics. The additional is that deep tech ecosystem. So we want to create those synergies, as I've said, and then you want to be able to implement that program model. Doug walked through the program model. I think the beauty about looking at the differences of the deep tech space is that you, as a Tech Accelerator, would be responsible for aligning the research topic space to the maturity of the program model. So you may not always start in the design stage. You may start in a build stage or a scale stage. And this is the opportunity to be able to create better investment with the taxpayer dollars and help work that technology toward the market. The last piece is managing the portfolio investment. So helping to shepherd award research teams and shepherd that award through accountability of mile-based progression, deliverables, and helping to make sure that they're unlocking some of those challenges that sometimes technologies face. Next slide. So thinking about the capabilities and the expertise, we want to be able to talk about some of the experience and capabilities that we're seeking for an organization, or it could be one or more organizations that come together. We want a partner that's going to be a strategic partner with us. This will be an individual or organization that has deep expertise within that space and can help to advance the overall ecosystem. We need them to be able to identify those barriers that we've been all talking about, and to be able to help align the investment appropriately with NSF. And most importantly, we also need those business operations. We believe that it's not just going to be technology that's going to be needing to be able to advance, but we need to be able to have the backbones of a tech accelerator, thinking about how we can shepherd the operations of the program model. So, for example, there's going to be subcontracting. Subcontracting would include finance, contracting, legal support, and so forth. And additionally, we want to think about evaluation. What are those evidence-based methodologies to help a tech accelerator evaluate not only the investment that's made in the research projects, but also the overall ecosystem of the deep tech space? Next slide, please. Marketing and communication and partnerships, I'm going to talk about them strategically together. They are extremely important also for growing and adapting the range of stakeholders that would reside within the space itself. So we want to be able to have a tech accelerator that's going to have the capabilities to engage with compelling products and messaging, and to be able to also grow those wide range of audiences, and particularly also the applicants that would go through the tech accelerator. So from a stakeholder engagement perspective, it's industry, it's nonprofit, it's academics. It could be federal, state, and local, venture capital, philanthropic, and there's so many other communities of practice that would be aligning to that technology topic area, helping to drive our research investment forward. The partnerships piece also is about high value, high impact partnerships that would also help to create those synergies within the tech accelerator space. Particularly as we think about partnerships, there's been questions that say, what are my partnerships? Am I required to have partnerships? Certainly for the wide range of capabilities and expertise that we're looking for within a tech accelerator, it could be just one organization that does have a deep bench of expertise. However, there's going to be opportunities and expectations around partnering, and I want to be able to give you some examples around that. The NSF expects to establish and utilize our merit review process as an example to help select the most promising technologies through that research investment track that they issue, those funding opportunities. We envision the Tech Accelerator to utilize external reviewers, pulling from a wide range of experts across academia, industry, federal, and so forth. So that's one example of partnerships. Another one is focused around cost share. That's aligned to our stage 3. So this is working towards raising additional funding aligned to the scale 3 stage. And then also thinking about some of the entrepreneurial services that would be able to help shepherd and guide and advise the teams that go through the Tech Accelerator. Coaching and mentorship is another opportunity that we see partnering within the Tech Accelerator. And from our experience of developing lots of innovation programs here at NSF, we believe that there's a wide range of expertise across each of these tech topics that can be great mentors to these teams to help not only guide them from the lab to market, but also on specific topics such as IP management and customer discovery and so forth. The last piece on this slide is about the entrepreneurial services. We expect the Tech Accelerator to be able to equip the teams with critical skills in sparking that innovation and positioning the technologies for impact. And a lot of this will come into a wide range of services that the Tech Accelerators would be establishing, but also we will be able to give you and plan to give you guidance and some of our entrepreneurial knowledge as well as tools to be able to help implement that within the program model itself. So examples are customer discovery, IP management, strategic networking, and all of the other things that would help to support market validation and go-to-market strategies. Next slide. All right. So when we think about the partnership with NSF, I've already talked about this a lot, but we really believe it is a collaborative relationship. There's been a couple of questions about the independence of X Labs, which are very independent. We expect the Tech Accelerators to operate independently, and we are working through how to develop this strategic guidance, but ultimately they will be a partner with NSF and the TIP program team. We want to be able to give the investment to the NSF Tech Accelerator operator, but we also want to be able to have that collaboration to be able to acknowledge where the investment is going and how it is being managed. As I've mentioned before, with the entrepreneurial services, we will also provide the implementation support through guidance and templates, being a partner with the Tech Accelerator to help ensure that the program model is implemented consistently across the first 4 Tech Accelerators. And ultimately, also, we see this opportunity of creating synergies, which is why we want to be able to create this network of Tech Accelerators, allowing each Tech Accelerator to be its expert of each deep tech space, but sharing best practices and collaborating with one another and NSF to ultimately reach our programmatic goals together. Next slide. The RFI outlines some programmatic expectations. These are just some initial expectations as we move into our process throughout the RFI. We will be outlining some other opportunities of expectations and deliverables. And this is also another opportunity for those that are contributing to feedback to be able to give us some insight and some thoughts. But first and foremost, we need to be able to have our Tech Accelerators be accountable for implementing the structure of our program model and oversight of our investment. And so there's going to be some deliverables as we think about how they are offering up the staffing management plan and the project execution plan. We've talked a little bit about a technology roadmap. This is the opportunity to assess that landscape, identify the commercialization barriers that need to be unlocked and addressed, as well as where there's opportunities for good investment within the first 1 to 2 to 3 years and so forth. Intellectual property management is going to be another deliverable. We recognize our Tech Accelerator organizations will likely have possibly their own investment and or their own opportunities there. And so we want to be able to make sure that there's not a conflict of interest and that there's proper guidance around that. And then ultimately also the impact roadmap and planning around the investment. We want to be able to have an understanding of what the Tech Accelerators is working toward and how they're going to accomplish what they're looking to set out toward, addressing the gaps, the barriers, and the advancement of the overall deep tech topic. Next slide. With that, we're going to jump into the next topic section of introducing our first 4 initial topics: ag tech, materials tech, ocean tech, and sci tech. And with that, I will hand it over to Abby Boyd, who will talk about ag tech. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Shelby. I'm really excited to talk about the Ag Tech Accelerator topic with the vision of transforming farming through innovative technology. The Ag Tech Accelerator should harness expertise across many agricultural and technical disciplines to commercialize deep technologies that bolster a resilient food system, which is absolutely crucial for the health, security, and prosperity of the United States. The accelerator should leverage advances across a number of key technology areas, including but not limited to biotech, AI, robotics, and many others, with the goal of enhancing productivity and yield, optimizing nutritional content of agricultural products, and strengthening domestic agricultural supply chains to expand high-value export markets, to name a couple of possible outcomes. This accelerator will also fill a gap that's been left by some stalled venture capital funding that we've been seeing over the last 3 or 4 years in the ag tech space. And it'll do so by capitalizing on administration investments in priorities in the key technology areas I mentioned and others, and as well as de-risking the technologies and prioritizing their implementation and adoption across the entire food and agriculture system. Next slide, please. So to give a little bit of a historical counterfactual example, We've seen many aspects of digital and precision agriculture adopted across the American food system over many years, but there are still barriers and bottlenecks that remain in enabling the widespread adoption of these techniques across farm size, region, crop, or livestock type, for example. And so some examples of those bottlenecks include limited access to broadband, the difficult profit margins in the agriculture sector, and the high startup costs and challenges of integrating new hardware and software systems on a farm. And it's not just the cost of a piece of equipment, but time is money on a farm. We know that any downtime in planting, in harvesting, can be the difference between a good and a bad season. So that is a very important part of ensuring that these technologies are well integrated. So had the NSF Tech Accelerators initiative existed in previously, they could have applied the comprehensive approach we're outlining in this webinar in the development and integration of these digital and precision ag tools to speed up the adoption and deliver more impactful and customizable results for American farmers. So with that, I'd like to give it to Alex to talk about materials tech.
Thank you, Abby. Great walkthrough. So advanced materials are the next stop. So here's the idea behind the Materials Tech Accelerator in plain terms. Advanced materials sit under everything: chips, medical devices, airplanes, for example. And the Materials Tech Accelerator is built to shorten the long road from discovery to actual use. So the focus is straightforward. You get tailored next-gen materials into real-world applications faster than the usual timeline. And these are materials likely that have properties you can dial in. For example, a strength to weight ratio or thermal behavior or electromagnetic response beyond what conventional materials offer. Now, how can we make this happen? This can lean on AI, for example, physics-aware AI technologies and digital twins, so teams can explore, simulate, and validate materials in days or weeks instead of months or years, and then prove it out in the lab. And the impact lands where it matters. For example, quantum technologies, AI hardware, microelectronics, energy, biotech, and defense. And these are just examples. There was a question in the chat, are these the only sectors or areas? The answer is no. So all sectors are covered under the Materials Tech Accelerator. And these are places where materials are often the bottleneck. So if we remove the bottleneck, entire sectors can move quicker. Next slide, please. Now, let's look at the historical counterfactual. For example, the case of graphene. Think about it, graphene is a single atom sheet of carbon with wild properties. So super strong, highly conductive, nearly transparent. So the science wowed everyone, but the commercialization of it took much longer. And that was not because it lacked promise, but because a scale up and quality were hard and the market pathways weren't obvious. So now if you drop in an accelerator model earlier and offer coaching, early industry engagement, access to pilot lines and metrology, and adoption of, and that's the adoption story that starts moving faster. And you can send clear signals to buyers. And that's the point here in the Materials Tech Accelerator. So when the next graphene shows up, we want the system to be ready to help it move and not stall. And with that, I hand it off to my colleague, Chris, to introduce the Ocean Tech Accelerator topic. Chris, take it away.
Welcome, everybody. It's great to have you to this very exciting opportunity. I'm going to talk about ocean tech, which is really about propelling the future of the ocean economy. And the plan for the Ocean Tech Accelerator is really to focus on the development of novel and unique and innovative technologies that really advance key ocean operations in the U.S. Exclusive Economic Zone, or the EEZ, and the Great Lakes, that's going to create opportunities to strengthen the U.S. global leadership in the development and export of marine sciences, of marine resources. And it's about de-risking technologies and advancing multi-use solutions for topics including things like ocean exploration, deep sea mapping, shipbuilding to support data-informed decision-making. And it's about bolstering national security by enabling threat detection, for example, and marine intelligence, safeguarding food security in the fisheries industry, and really empowering particularly local preparedness against ocean-based hazards. Next slide, please. And to give you a sort of historical counterfactual example, if you look at the Argo Float program, which is really a global network of floating ocean robots that provides real ocean data in near real time. While this program has certainly had significant impacts on the field of oceanography over the last 30 years, its design and deployment has really been driven by scientific needs primarily, rather than a sense of market pull. And the we envision the NSF Tech Accelerators market-informed approach could have potentially created a global ocean sensor network that's really optimized to tackle things like economic, scientific, and national security challenges that facilitated the rapid development of such technologies with an eye on maximizing market impact and advancing US competitiveness in a much more accelerated fashion. So with that said, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Flo, who's going to introduce SciTech.
Thanks very much, Chris, and welcome everyone. I have the pleasure of introducing the fourth topic of the initial set of NSF Tech Accelerators, scientific instrumentation. This NSF Tech Accelerator is focused on deploying tools that revolutionize the American scientific enterprise. We know that progress in science requires both brilliant questions and first-rate instrumentation. Indeed, inventive scientific tools and instrumentation technologies are central to scientific progress, opening new scientific frontiers with real-world impact. However, limitations in available instrumentation have constrained this progress. Critical sensing manipulation capabilities remain out of reach, and the instruments that do exist are largely proprietary, closed systems with little capacity for adaptation and interoperability. The SciTech Accelerator aims to accelerate the commercialization of novel scientific instruments, tools, technologies, and platforms to support breakthrough discoveries and their translation to real-world impact. The SciTech Accelerator is intentionally broad in scope. It is designed to drive impact across a wide range of basic and applied research disciplines through advancement of cutting-edge scientific instrumentation built on open standards and interfaces, modular architectures, shared tool chains, and updated data analytics to overcome limitations in speed, precision, reliability, and operability. The goal is to address the fragmentation in the instrumentation ecosystem and support interconnectedness of modern scientific inquiry by lowering access barriers, enabling cross-disciplinary use, generating data that is interoperable and reusable by design, and accelerating the emergence of autonomous laboratories. Next slide, please. Let me share a counterfactual example involving a well-known challenge in the scientific enterprise. As long as scientific research has been conducted, the introduction of new tools, equipment, workflows, and data types although integral and critical for the advancement of scientific discovery, has created challenges in laboratory integration, vertically as well as horizontally. The challenge can include compatibility issues, workflow bottlenecks, automation gaps, data management challenges, just to name a few. They each contribute to hindering R&D environments from opening or operating at their full potential. We think the NSF Accelerators initiative could have avoided impediments to the development of cutting-edge interoperable tools and technologies, and importantly, the integration into existing workflows and laboratory infrastructure, thereby accelerating the pace of breakthrough discoveries. This ends the presentation of the 4 initial NSF Tech Accelerators topics. Shelby will now provide an overview of the RFI and tell you about RFI requirements.
Thank you, Flo. Next slide, please. So I want to take us some time to talk about our approach to establishing the first 4 tech accelerators. And we're doing this starting with the request for information, but we're utilizing what's considered an other transaction authority, which allows us to do a multi-step OT contractual process. And I want to take a few minutes to walk you through how this process is going to work. So the first step was issuing this RFI. As you read through the RFI, this is an opportunity for organizations that are interested in establishing and implementing a tech accelerator within the first 4 deep tech topics, as well as responding to the RFI through feedback, community feedback. We cannot stress that enough. But the organizations that are interested in applying to be considered for a tech accelerator, you must submit through the RFI. We will then assess having an understanding of those prospective tech accelerator capabilities that are outlined in the RFI response form. We're going to be looking at the responses against capabilities, qualifications, expertise, to be able to help shape the initiative and the role of the tech accelerator. One note is that if you do not submit for those organizations that are interested in being considered for a tech accelerator, you will not be eligible to be invited into step 2, which I want to talk through. So step 2 is the next step for inviting for proposals. So based on NSF's assessment of the respondents, and particularly those that are interested in establishing the tech accelerators, we're going to take the qualifications and the capabilities and expertise, and we're going to invite selected organizations that responded to the RFI to submit a formal proposal. Through that step, we will be giving another solicitation opportunity that outlines even more criteria that would help to form the technical formal proposal to be able to be submitted back to NSF. One note is that those invited applicants must be registered in SAM.gov. So you must have a UEI number. And after that submission process, we will go through the evaluation process. Additionally, once the proposal evaluation has been done, we might be considering inviting for orals. So orals is another opportunity for NSF to assess the capabilities and qualifications in a different format of those applicants, to then be able to move into step 3, which is negotiating the OT contract. So once we've established, based on the highest ranking order of evaluations, we will begin to engage with the individual organizations recommended for the OT agreement. We will start negotiating the agreement, and particularly terms and conditions. And then the last step is the award of the NSF Tech Accelerators. NSF will then officially award, and we will work to officially launch the NSF Tech Accelerator after we've completed all of these steps. And once a tech accelerator has been launched, this is now the opportunity that they will begin to implement the program model and the opportunity for the research innovation community to start to be able to engage. Next slide. Okay, eligibility. Eligibility is outlined in the RFI, but a couple of notes. You, as a responder to the RFI, feedback and/or organizations are interested in the Tech Accelerator opportunity. It is open to anybody excluding foreign entities. A Tech Accelerator can involve multiple organizations. I think we've had a few questions about the partnership opportunity, but we just want to make sure that those responses and those that move into step 2 of the invited proposal must be submitted by a lead organization. So organizations that are partnering or have subcontract agreements eventually put into place, it has to be the lead that would be submitting the RFI response to move through that process that I just talked about previously. The applicant is also not required to have the subcontracts or the partners in place at the RFI time period. So we recognize it takes time to establish those relationships and to assess the official requirements in step 2 of the inviting for proposal stage. So there will be opportunities for those organizations to be able to determine any subcontractors and partner agreements at that time. And then the last opportunity around, or the last emphasis on eligibility, is to make sure that we're looking for a robust organization that has a deep bench of capabilities and expertise and services, and that they are able to perform 51% of the work. Recognizing that not every organization may have the full suite of capabilities that we're seeking, and therefore partners might be the right way forward. And so we want to emphasize that criteria. The relationship and our goal of establishing a tech accelerator for those that are wondering what that relationship and long-term perspective is, it's going to be right now a base period of up to 6 years. And then we have an opportunity of establishing further future option periods at the discretion of NSF based on the performance and, most importantly, the specific technology topic area. If the Tech Accelerator is doing what it needs to be doing, and we've tackled a lot of barriers, we've made some huge advancements, it's now an opportunity that NSF could be investing in other innovation programs and other NSF Tech Accelerators in a different topic. Next slide, please. There's been a couple of questions about conflicts of interest and the opportunities of, am I eligible to be a tech accelerator? Can I be a researcher and be a tech accelerator? So I want to take the time to walk through conflicts of interest of where we've identified potential conflicts so that it's clear for the audience here today and moving forward. Organizations may serve as a tech accelerator, including sub awards and partners, or they may participate in the research and innovation that Tech Accelerator would be issuing those funding opportunities. They cannot do both. So you must choose. With this, we recognize the academic community is experts in research, and we highly value that relationship. And so there is an opportunity for the academic community to have to decide on what to do here. But we see that the Tech Accelerators is expected to operate independently of the research teams that they support, and they will not be permitted to apply for and or hold any interest in the research awards issued through any of the Tech Accelerators. The second point is that the awarded NSF Tech Accelerators, including partners and subcontracts, cannot apply for and or receive research funding from another Tech Accelerator. So if we just think about that, for example, if you are an organization where your business side is other, you have other research and technology areas, this would prohibit you as a tech accelerator from applying and or receiving funding from another tech accelerator that's been established. And the last point of potential conflict is that an awarded NSF Tech Accelerator is expected to maintain a strict separation between NSF Tech Accelerator operations and the other investment activities, the other side of their business. This does include awardees and partners, and they may not use NSF funds and NSF funded personal time or any other resources to be able to otherwise support the investment activities that would benefit the other side of their business. All right, next slide. So for those that have already responded to the RFI, and there's many of you on today's webinar, and so we're very excited to see the energy behind this. There's a couple different paths that I want to outline for the RFI for you. The first opportunity is the prospective NSF Tech Accelerator. So we are seeking organizations that are interested in becoming an NSF Tech Accelerator. And so if you are one of them, you must respond to all sections of the RFI response form. And a minimum one response per lead organization can apply and respond to the RFI. The second opportunity is seeking feedback. While we have put our heads together for many, many months to talk about and think about this program initiative and the program model, the functionality behind it, the goals and the purpose behind each tech accelerator, the deep tech topics that are underinvested and so forth, and the relationship between NSF and the tech accelerators, we still want feedback. There's opportunities from a community of experts and those that have run innovation programs, those that have engaged in innovation programs, to be able to help us make adjustments and improvements of the Tech Accelerator initiative. So we are seeking that feedback. And if you are in that category, we would like and highly encourage you to respond to the RFI response form, and you would fill out sections 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. Okay. As far as guidance, you're going to want to read the guidance closely. And most importantly, for those that are prospective NSF Tech Accelerators. But we do have some guidance outlined in the RFI that we really want to make sure that are very clear. The first and foremost is we're looking for very concise answers to the feedback. Our experience is that it can get a little lengthy, and so we know we're going to have a lot of responses to go through it. So short and concise, 1 to 4 sentences, 400 characters per response of each of the sections of the RFI. It's going to be most helpful to us. When you're developing those responses to the RFI, refer to it, please. And please don't include any hyperlinks other than your organization company website. That would be most helpful to us. The most important thing that I cannot stress to you enough, particularly those that are applicants for the NSF Tech Accelerator, is you must submit through the other transaction submission system that's highlighted below on the screen. And the deadline is 4 p.m. Eastern, July 14th. So coming up in a few weeks. Next slide. All right. We're going to move into Q&A very, very shortly. But before we do, I just want to take an opportunity to thank you all for coming on today on a Friday afternoon to be able to learn about the NSF Tech Accelerator initiative. We are very excited about this opportunity and to be able to establish these first 4 tech accelerators that will ultimately help to translate technology and impact toward the market and really deliver outcomes to the American people. If you have any additional questions or concerns, you have an opportunity to email us at thetechAccelerators@nsf.gov. And we have additional information on nsf.gov at this URL. Both of the URL and the email will be provided in our thank you email within a few days. And we will share the presentation as well as this recording so that everybody has it. All right, next slide. And with that, we're going to move into questions, and we have an opportunity to open up the dialogue for a few minutes of Q&A. There's already been a lot of questions that have already come in, but this is an opportunity where we can dive deeper and emphasize some of the questions that have already come in today. I recognize there's already a lot of questions. We will not get through all of them. One thing that I will remind you is that we plan to develop a frequently asked, an FAQ, answers and questions. It will be posted to sam.gov where the RFI resides. And that will give you the most recent information to help answer any additional questions that we don't get through the webinar for today. All right. Let me just see here. So a couple of questions have already come in around, let's see here. Let's focus on our portfolio. the Tech Accelerators initiative is recommending ag tech, materials tech, ocean tech, and sci tech. But there's other questions around what are other deep tech topic areas that should be considering. Doug, would you like to take that?
Sure. I think there have been at least some questions answered on that. In the end, these are the first 4 that we're starting with. And there will be future tech accelerators. Those topics, of course, will be developed in partnership with the community. And this is your opportunity when you respond to the RFI with feedback. If there are specific deep tech areas that you think we should consider for our next round of accelerators, please take the time to write that up as part of your RFI response.
All right. Another clarification is about our program model. There's some questions about how a researcher would journey through the program model, the number of awardees, the maximum funding. Let's dig into it a little bit and give some clarity on how we can utilize, or we see the Tech Accelerator being flexible with our program model, and to be able to help give an applicant or researcher an understanding of how that will work. So Chris, would you like to take that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah. So thinking about how does the program model work with regards to defining the research topic and an applicant perspective?
I think it really hinges upon sort of what the topic is and what the stage is that's being proposed, and so I think it depends very much on the applicant and the actual opportunity itself.
Okay. Doug, anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'd like to just point out, I think there were some questions about the numbers. So let me just use an example. Chris led our ocean tech. There is the possibility that we could have a stage 1 and or a stage 2 and or a stage 3 in ocean tech. If we had a stage 1, that would be 10 awards. If we had a stage 1 and a stage 2, that would be 15 awards. If we had a stage 1, a stage 2, and a stage 3, that would be 18 awards, all within ocean tech. And some of that will really be dependent upon the feedback we get on these topic areas as part of the RFI response. So a maximum of 18 in each topic for the first time around.
But it may also start in just one stage.
It may also just start in one stage. So could be as minimum as 12 and as maximum as 72.
Yeah. I will also point out that if a tech accelerator were to fund within a specific stage, say the stage 2 build, and that's up to 5 million and 24 months, there might be an opportunity or an assessment by the tech accelerator that they will recommend to not proceed into stage 3 build. Doug, I don't know if there's anything else that you would want to emphasize around that.
No, I think that's fine. Let's move on to
Okay.
some other questions.
Okay. So there's also some additional questions around synergies. How do we foresee the tech accelerators working with X Labs, SBIR, the Regional Innovation Engines program? Doug, would you like to take that?
Sure. We've been actively involved in the X Lab development as we've been developing the tech accelerators. We are working to document and identify kind of in-ramps and on-ramps and off-ramps of different programs and how they might fit with tech accelerators. For example, SBIR, small businesses, they could easily fit into a stage 2 or a stage 3 because the company already exists. If it's just an academic project, likely going to be in a stage 1. But in the end, we're working to document all of the on-ramps and off-ramps with other programs within TIP and even potentially across NSF.
There's some questions also about applicants once the Tech Accelerator has been established, and particularly around companies. Can industry be an applicant to a research opportunity issued by Tech Accelerator? I'm not sure who would like to take that. Abby, would you like to take that?
Sure, absolutely. That's the beauty of this Tech Accelerators program and how flexible it is that we're soliciting applications, or rather the accelerator will be soliciting applications from, it can be an academic institution, nonprofits, and businesses as well. So we really want to leverage the entire scope of the United States technology development enterprise.
There's also some other questions around possible research applicants where they might have already, a company might have already received venture capital investment, or where capital investment and follow-on investment is most appropriate for an organization that is also interested in applying to the Tech Accelerator funding opportunities issued by an individual Tech Accelerator. Doug, could you clarify that?
Sure. So it really depends on 2 things. 1, the stage of the accelerator. Is it a design, a build, or a scale stage? And the maturity of the technology of the applicant. Does it fit to a stage 1, a stage 2, or a stage 3? If you're a startup company, you're probably not just in the early stages. You're probably in a stage 2, which would be equivalent to a seed stage, or a stage 3, which would be equivalent to a Series A. And so again, it's dependent upon you, the applicant, to determine what the maturity of your technology is in order to apply to the right stage of the accelerator.
There's some questions around entrepreneurial services. Could we give a few examples of, even though I covered it, to reiterate what we plan to do around we expect the Tech Accelerator to implement for entrepreneurial services, and perhaps we could just define a few things within stage 1, design, 2, build, 3, scale. Doug, would you like to take that?
Sure. So we anticipate the accelerator will work on several other, I won't call them curriculum, but it's mentor services. So certainly in the early stage design and build stage, you have to worry about customer discovery. You worry about team science. Are you putting together the right team? Are you finding the right partnerships, etc.? As they get a little older in stage 2 and potentially in stage 3, we look at other things like product market fit, financial modeling, and other services. Again, that wouldn't normally be something you would find in an academic classroom, if you will. These are really services that accelerators provide in the non-tech accelerator world, but we're trying to provide them as part of the services to all of the teams.
So thinking about Accelerator's role and scope and the operational model of the Tech Accelerators, what exactly will an NSF Tech Accelerator be expected to do? And how much flexibility will those operators or organizations have in designing the program? And will accelerators be expected to operate nationally, regionally, or within a specific technology segment? That was a mouthful. I might have to digest that for you guys. Who would like to take that?
I'm happy to take it.
Great.
So yeah, that was a mouthful.
It was.
But in the end, the accelerator, and you do this with the RFI, an accelerator will be selected for each of the 4 topics. That accelerator will then provide a solicitation to the community. It is not regional, it is not local, it's the national community of a topic. The accelerator will then, their job, working with NSF, is to publish a solicitation, evaluate the proposals that are submitted, make selections to who will get awards, and then go ahead and make those awards. And then they too will also be responsible for all of the post-award management of those awards, all with oversight from NSF, but the accelerator will be responsible for all of things like day-to-day operations of the accelerator, etc. So there have been several questions about the cost for the accelerator. That's your job, is to tell us what you think it's going to take to run an accelerator, as we've described the program model, over the course of not only the first year, but how do you vision the accelerator working over the first 6 years? And that's a bit of the challenge that you as the applicant will have to deal with, but that's what we're asking you to provide.
And budgets don't need to be provided unless you are invited to
Correct.
step 2, invite for proposals. I think the other
Correct.
thing I would reiterate is the flexibility is in how the Tech Accelerator partners against the wide range of capabilities, expertise to meet the goals and performance of the program model and the day-to-day engagement. How you structure your team, what capabilities are full-time versus part-time, or ad hoc, whatever it might be. It's really up to you all. We will be sort of expecting a dedicated team with some of the key expertise and personnel to be able to operate and implement the program model. So there is flexibility there, as well as helping to be really the expert of the deep tech space, helping to advise NSF and be that partner to accelerate that technology space forward. There's another question about relationships to the NSF innovation ecosystems. How does the Tech Accelerator program model differ? And we've already talked a little bit about this, but differ from like SBIR engines, the and regional innovation engines, organizations like Manufacturing USA and some other organizations are already investing in deep tech. Doug, do you want to take that?
I think what we've decided we will do is there will be, as part of our FAQ, a description of kind of how we relate to each of these other programs. Suffice it to say, some of them are earlier stage than us. Some of them we would expect, companies that come out of the Tech Accelerator could certainly go into SBIR. They could also come out of SBIR and go into the Tech Accelerator. So there are, again, multiple on and off ramps for different programs within NSF with the Tech Accelerators.
Alex, I have a question for you on materials tech. Is NSF open to considering circularity in materials, or is it strictly limited to the development of new materials, such as biomaterials and composites?
Yeah, so we are open to all topics. At this point, we are not limiting it to one particular class of materials or one subtopic. But yeah, some of this will be decided with the Tech Accelerator, who will have expertise in this space after the Tech Accelerator is awarded.
There's also another question around the Tech Accelerator from our program model perspective around, can we only award a Tech Accelerator within one stage aspect of our program model? So stage 1. And the answer is no. We would expect the Tech Accelerator to be able to assess the landscape, align the maturity of that research space to our model, and then issue multiple research topics appropriately within that deep tech space. So this is what we're looking for. We're also looking for individual organizations per tech accelerator topic. And perhaps, Flo, would you like to talk about the synergies that we envision with NSF and those tech accelerators?
Yeah, thank you. There is, as Doug mentioned, there are opportunities to partner. We are partnering, or the program is partnering with other corners within NSF and drawing on the expertise within NSF. And there's opportunity for those who have been supported or are thinking about being supported by NSF through other programs, once they have had that support, to enter into our program, provided that there's a call from a tech accelerator that fits it. So I shouldn't say our program, it's really the tech accelerator at that point that issues the call, and there may be a fit, both in terms of maturity as well as topic. I'm building on what just Alex mentioned. And the question on how we envision partnering with other entities outside of NSF in the same fashion, they can be partners for the accelerators as well as for the individual teams that may be selected by an accelerator. So there are many partnership opportunities. In fact, that's a key element of this effort, of this initiative.
Okay. If an organization has expertise and is interested in one or more tech accelerator topics, what should they do? Abby, would you like to take that?
Well, I think part of that Shelby mentioned earlier in the webinar. We do see that there are a lot of kind of horizontal technologies that connect all of these accelerators. You know, biotechnology can be applied on land and in the sea. And so we do expect there to be quite a bit of overlap as far as applying to the RFI. Organizations interested in leading an accelerator should only submit to one. Am I correct on that?
You are correct.
Okay.
So you have to choose one. One is putting it in, I guess, in the RFI that gets you through that process. But
so I think you
go
want
ahead.
to, I was going to say, I think you want to figure out as an organization where your strongest team effort would land, I think.
Let's see here. Some questions. Can we clarify the role of a technical research development within the design, build, and scale stages? Are teams expected to conduct substantive R&D to overcome the technical barriers, or are these stages primarily focused on commercialization and market adoption? So I think we need to probably re-clarify what we mean by tackling barriers of commercialization barriers. Doug, would you like to take that question?
Well, I'm going to just use the one example that I think I used earlier, which has to do with customer needs. So while we do, if we're in stage 1 and stage 2, have training and curriculum services or mentorship services around customer discovery, it's still a problem. And so I think in the end, what we want to ensure is that the barrier of customer discovery, customer needs is addressed within the accelerator. I'm sure the customers are very different between ocean tech and ag tech and sci tech and materials tech. So each accelerator is going to be responsible for helping the awarded teams address those barriers within their topic area.
High tech topic for you, Flo. Does the NSF expect the operator of the tech accelerator to propose a focused set of subdomains within scientific instrumentation, or to support a broader portfolio across many research fields? It's a great question.
Yes, it is a very good question. So when preparing a response to the ultimately when preparing a response to the RFI and then the solicitation, we will probably invite various areas that you believe are at the cutting edge that really would benefit from this type of initiative. And it sort of reminds me of the earlier question, what to focus on. You want to play to your strong suit. At the same time, we recognize that there are shared barriers or gaps across different arenas. And so the decision will lie with the applicant, what sells most. But we do anticipate that depending on the development in the field, the opportunities, that they won't be equally distributed across the various types of subtopics, if you wish, within, for instance, sci-tech.
Okay, a couple questions also on partnerships. I want to come back to clarify how interested organization to become a tech accelerator needs to understand the partnering opportunities. There's some questions around what are the types of partners that are allowed? Is it academia, industry, private sector? What are our parameters? I think we can cover conflict of interest again. And then also thinking about university or academic involvement from a partnership perspective. Doug, can you take that?
Sorry, I missed your question.
So partnership opportunities, clarifying what are
Oh.
the types of partnerships between academia,
Yeah.
industry, and how are universities able to partner with the Tech Accelerator organization if they're also doing
Sure.
research?
Sure. So I think there's two levels here. One is the accelerator level, which says a university, or I mean, if you want to be a lead organization, you're going to build your team as best you can. You might need to use university faculty as technical experts, etc. Just keep in mind that any organizations that are included in that Tech Accelerator team could potentially run into conflict of interest with the research team. So you have to be aware of that. As far as a research team, when it goes to being awarded a subcontract from an accelerator, there will also be a check done there to ensure the teams meet all research security requirements that have been now assessed on the community, as well as conflicts of interest that could occur between the innovation teams and the Tech Accelerator.
We have 2 minutes left. I just want to reiterate a couple of things. There is lots of questions that says, I want to do both. Do I need to make a decision in the RFI? The answer is yes. If you are going to go down the path of the Tech Accelerator organizational applicant role, you must fill out the response form in its entirety as a Tech Accelerator applicant. But should you not be invited to step 2, invite for proposal, and we move through the process, we launch a Tech Accelerator, you are willing and able, and we would love to have you engage at the Tech Accelerator level when they issue research opportunities. So it does not preclude you from doing research and applying for those research opportunities if you do not make it through into step 2. So want to reiterate that. Another thing, if you are interested in the Tech Accelerator topics, you must select one. I think Abby covered that, but we want to reiterate that. And if there are other deep tech topics that are right for our framework, we want to know about them. They may not be the first part of our set, but they are an opportunity to scale our program very, very quickly. And the last piece is feedback. Feedback. We really want to be able to gain your insights to make improvements that will be valuable to the Tech Accelerators framework, our program model, our Tech Accelerator role, and how we serve the research community and ultimately the American people. And with that, if there's anything else for you, Doug, to say, then we'll let everyone go.
No, thank you everyone for being here today. We look forward to communications ongoing.
Thank you.